Some of you may have watched the second part of the presentations I did to highlight a presentation that I did on the book of Joel and the prophetic patterns on December 7th of 2013. And in that second part of the presentation, I shared about reaping what you sow and really what the Bible means about that. So some of this will be review, but it has a little different twist because what I'm really presenting right now is going to be about the shaking and understanding that, and it helps us to understand this as we study prophecy and see what's going on now. So I'm going to remind us that I talked about reaping what you sow, what that means when it comes to understanding the locust in the book and the other insects in the book of Joel, and Matthew 13, where it's talking about the plants that growing, the progression of what happens as plants grow, and what we see as the final fruit with the harvest. So if you want to read that, go to Matthew 13 and read that parable, because Jesus gives us a lot of wonderful parables to illustrate the time that we're living in. And then I talked about in Joel 2:25, where it talks about that we have a promise: I will restore to you the years that have been affected by the destruction of these insects. And prophetically, this means a lot of things in our personal life as well as our external life and the church. And then I talked about the fourth generation. The fourth generation is after these locusts have done what they do, then what happens? Because by that point, the natural consequence is a lot of destruction. Okay, sometimes ultimately nations that were wiped out in the Bible. So in Genesis 15, verses 13 through 15, it talks about God's mercy to the Amorites. The Amorites were worshiping idols. They had child sacrifice, child prostitution, abuse to children, abuse to the elders, all kinds of things like that. But God gave them 400 years of mercy because he saw that there were people there affected by that, and he didn't want to just wipe them out when he knew their heart. So the thing about this is, when he gives mercy, he knows our heart, even when we sometimes come from families that have all these difficult problems. Then in the Ten Commandments, Exodus 20, verses 5 and 6, he talks about mercy to the third and fourth generation of those who love him. That means those of us who inside, wherever we are, even if we're considered an outcast by an organized church or whatever, God knows our heart. And if our hearts are open to him and we're seeking to follow him, there's a positive consequence in our life and in the lives of our children unto the third and fourth generation. And the Bible gives many examples of how this really happened. Then in Jonah 4, we talked about the mercy to Nineveh, verses 10 through 11 of Jonah 4. That's where they go back to studying. And then we talked about the book of Hebrews, where it talks about Jesus coming back without sin. Not to deal with sin, sin's been dealt with, but instead to bring us home to him, which is what we're looking for. And because of that, there is a shaking, and we need to talk about that because that's what's going on right now. So I'm going to shut this off, then I'm going to come back and present some truths about that.